Now, I'm going to play a movie of the demolition in Al-Araqib and hopefully explain it as I go. Let's make it a bit quieter. No. So basically, they know now that there's going to be a demolition in the morning. And what's happened is they've lived in this village. They have deeds from Ottoman and British times to prove that they live in this village. But when Israel did its first census, it didn't recognize the village. So it's one of the unrecognized villages, obviously. There are about 48 of these in Israel. And Israel says there's no people living on this land. This is just state land. It's empty land. And there's no settlers that want to live here. They just want to plant trees. The JNF wants to plant trees because that would drive the Arabs out of this area. And these are Bedouin, but you can see that their houses, these aren't tents. These aren't some sort of shanty huts. These are actual normal homes like any you'd see in any other village. And what Israel's done is simply declared that these people don't have a right to these places, however long they may have lived there. And again, it's important to emphasize that these people are citizens of Israel. These are Bedouin with Israeli passports. One man in this village teaches Hebrew literature. And in fact, at this demolition, although it's not on video, a former student of his from Beersheba University came up to him because he was one of the soldiers carrying out the demolition and said, he said something like, "I'm sorry, but there's nothing I can do." And the professor said, "How does that help me? You can refuse." But obviously that didn't happen. So this is essentially them lighting a fire as a sign that something's about to happen to attract attention from the area. And it's important to note as well that Israel doesn't just destroy these homes, because we've rebuilt this village 8 times now, and it's been demolished 7 times rather. And so basically, Israel hasn't just destroyed the homes, because you can rebuild. You can live in a wooden house that can be built in maybe, a few hours. But Israel destroys the livelihood in these villages. It destroys the trees. It destroys the farm animals, living enclosures. It destroys the land that was tilled and the furrows. And the idea is to make it so you cannot make a living off this piece of land. And the idea is simply that the Arabs shouldn't live there anymore. Even within Israel proper, there's a movement of the Arab population to certain population centers. So the idea is that these people will move to the nearest town called Rahat, which is a Bedouin town, an Arab town, where you basically have services for Arabs that can isolate them from the rest of the Israeli population. Now, Israel, for this demolition, arrived with 1,500 soldiers. So, for a village that has a population of maybe 200 to 300. So, this is a display of absolutely overwhelming force. And they even, you can see it on the video later, they came with buses of Jewish students to take the possessions of the Bedouin and shove them onto trucks so that they could be kept and actually ransomed, essentially, because the court then said, if you pay X shekels, you can get your stuff back. And the students happily loaded all of these onto their trucks, dancing, singing, because they were doing this wonderful thing for the advancement of the Jewish state. And so it's a testament really to the effectiveness of Israeli internal and external propaganda, that you can find a substantial crop of young Jewish people who are happy to be doing, to be destroying these Palestinian homes. Of course, here you have the counterpart of that, because the people you see getting arrested are predominantly Israeli activists. I think you even had Gal Lugassi speaking in here a few months back. So she's been with us at a lot of the Al-Araqib protests. In fact, she does a lot more activism than I do, because I'm more sort of on the NGO side. And so there are a minority of the population that do, and they work very, very hard to try to prevent these actions. But once you're there, there's really nothing you can do. The army has guns, it has bulldozers. You can make yourself a nuisance, you can try to do something that might get you in the news. But really, it's almost impossible to stop these demolitions. And you'll notice here, he's not speaking Arabic, he's speaking Hebrew. Everybody in this village, has gone through the Israeli school system. A lot of them identify with Israel, and nevertheless, they have no rights, simply because they are Arabs. And a large portion of Israeli policy is geared towards separating the two populations. Even people living at a nearby Jewish town would probably have never interacted on a personal level with one of the Bedouin. Everyone drives through and says, we're terrified. We don't want to talk to them. They're thieves, they're murderers, And there's this very strong sense of being afraid of Palestinians without ever having met one. And the separation wall is just another component of that. In Jerusalem, it's very difficult to drive from West Jerusalem to East Jerusalem by accident. The idea is that once you're in a Jewish area, you never accidentally wind up in an Arab area. So you can maintain this fear of the other. You can maintain this sort of mystery and terror about the other side of the population. And so here you see the bulldozers arriving and the homes getting demolished. The cars were moved to the local cemetery to protect them because I believe UNESCO has some sort of designation on the cemetery which makes Israel reluctant to destroy it. And in fact, every Palestinian now takes sanctuary in the cemetery at this village, which essentially proves that the lives of living Palestinians are less important here than those of dead ones. And particularly ironic is this, the destruction of the olive trees, which were the main subsistence for the people in this village. And remember, the goal of this state land is to plant trees, to make it a forest. But you want to make it a Jewish forest, not an Arab forest. You want to make it so that there's no sustainable farm life in this village. So even if they want to persevere and stay on the land, they can't farm it, they can't make their living off it, and eventually through sheer attrition, they'll all simply leave. Across the road, there's a village that's been demolished 50 times. And slowly, the population has gone down. And this is essentially the idea behind these mass demolitions, of which there have been a large amount recently, especially in the Jordan Valley. And they've looked very much like this, and it's because the Jordan Valley is of strategic importance. No one really knows why they've chosen the Negev as another target, but there is something called Blueprint Negev, which is a plan for the Judaicization of the Negev in general. And this is, the clearest manifestation of it. And so you can see the chicken coops, the houses with the doves, all the camels, horses, everything that the Bedouin relied on for their lifestyle is destroyed. And this indifference to the lifestyle or to the lives of these people is symptomatic within Israeli house demolition policy. What the myth is that house demolitions are something that Israel does to punish terrorists or the families of terrorists. They demolish houses that they've seen rockets launched from. They demolish houses that, terrorists live in. Whereas in fact, even under Israeli statistics, only 18% have been punitive demolitions. The vast majority are administrative. They're exactly like this one, where Israel simply decided that they need this territory, or they don't want this particular Bedouin population there, or it's interfering with something, or even just to send the message that this is still the state of Israel, this is the Jewish state, and thus, you don't belong here in some way.